Now, the other thing, of course, that you might realize is the fact that as far as some of the Quranic verses are concerned, which might, of course, you might think that how can we be friends with non-Muslims and how can we gel in with their society and even attend their functions and their all their festivities when there is such a harsh part of the Quran, or there are verses of the Quran which speak so. So in my study, and I can quote many scholars, but for want of time, I'm just going to summarize what I've understood, and you can always ask questions. That as far as these verses are concerned, which speak of harshness with the non-Muslims, they belong to a very specific category of non-Muslims, and these were the non-Muslims who, in the prophetic era, prophetic era is the era which starts from Adam and ends on Muhammad. These were the people who had intentionally denied the prophet who had come to them. So, I mean, the word that I'm using is needs a little attention. It was intentional denial. It was denial after being convinced of the message of the prophet. So the Quran tells us that only such people who intentionally deny, who out of arrogance, they accept something, they know that's correct, but say, okay, I'm not going to accept it. And the Quran also tells us that this intentional denial is something that we as human beings can never discover because it relates to your own heart. So in the era of God's messengers, God is the person who actually informs his messengers that now your people in front of you, they are guilty of intentional denial. Prophets of God, they themselves also are not in a position to earmark people who have intentionally denied, because as I said, it relates to your intentions and your own inner feelings. So it is through wahi, divine revelation, that in that era God signals and tells the prophet that yes, you have done what was needed to be done. You have completed your preaching, and now they are convinced of the truth, but now they are in object denial. So for such people, the Quran says that as a punishment, you should cut off their ties with them. As punishment, at times you have to wage war against them. As a punishment, you must not seek their forgiveness because they are enemies of God. They have proven themselves. So these are the Jews and Christians about which the Quran speaks mostly in the Quran. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that we regard the same Jews and Christians to be the ones who are living today. So yes, they have the same beliefs, but they are not the ones about whom we can say with full assurity that, well, such and such a person is fully aware of the message of God, and now he is, in spite of that full awareness, still bent upon denying. Because, as I said, there is no prophet today. No one can be in a position to say that, to make that claim which prophets of God could. And also, even in the case of prophets of God, they could never have ascertained whether the person was deliberately denying or not. For that also God was needed. But today, God no longer communicates to people. So therefore, even if there are people today who might be intentionally denying, we can never know about them. So therefore, for all such non-Muslims, we have to be very compassionate, we have to be very considerate, and we have to realize that if they are not coming closer to the message of Islam, it's not just because they know and they still would not accept it, but it could be because of misinformation, could be because of disinformation, it could be because of our own attitude. We Muslims, the way we behave, draws away people from our own behavior. There could be a number of reasons. So therefore, we have to understand that we must not replicate the model of the Jews and Christians, which is mentioned in the Quran, the way we generally do, and as a result, produce people like Osama bin Laden and Mullah Omar who are bent upon waging war. So we have to realize that those verses had a specific import, and those verses still are relevant in the sense that they tell us that people who are so arrogant or who are denying the messenger of God in spite of being convinced about him, they are going to be punished in this world. So today in the post-prophetic era, if we are not being punished for this denial, then it's only because our punishment is being delayed to the day of judgment. So it's like a reminder to us when we read the Quran that people are punished, or people could be punished if they, out of arrogance, out of any personal interest, end up so arrogant that they end up denying God. And God is going to hold them to account in the hereafter, because he did hold them to account in the era of his messengers. But in this post-prophetic era in which we are living, from Muhammad to the day of judgment, for us, this relevance is that we keep reading the Quran and keep reminding ourselves that this could be our fate as well. But our fate has been deferred to the day of judgment. So their fate they took place in this world, but in the post-prophetic era, our fate has been deferred to the day of judgment. So therefore, today, if we are living with these people, our attitude towards them has to be extremely congenial. It has to be the way that you would treat any person of your own community. Yes, you can have your own identity, you can have your own specifics, but that doesn't mean at all that you have to, for example, uh, quote this verse of the Quran that don't make friends with Jews and Christians and then start following it, because as I said, it has a very particular context.